Do I like ghosts? Emphatically. Do I like vampires? Oh yeah.
Finger licking good.
Do I like werewolves? Absolutely. Welcome back, and in this episode, I want to talk about the horror movies that have been the most influential. And I want to stress, influential, in the sense that these are the movies I go back to time and time again. The movies I love to see referenced in conversation or on television. You know, the type of movie that, when it's cited, will derail a conversation and, more than likely, will force the other person to try to run away. You'll follow though, because they need to know about how Stephen King and Steven Spielberg once worked together on a remake of The Haunting, a point I'm going to bore you with later. So without further ado, here are my top 5 most influential, along with a few memorable mentions.
I am when they ain't been shaved.
I remember coming home from work on Halloween. It was my first job, and I made pizzas at Round Table Pizza. I got home just a few minutes after a marathon of horror movies had started. I saw a guy driving a truck wearing a cowboy hat. And coming from Nevada, that was something I was used to seeing, but not in a vampire movie. Vampires were for castles and manor homes. I was immediately drawn in, and when it was done, I looked to see when it was playing again, so I could set up my VCR. Such a great movie that, to this day, seems to be underappreciated. Sure, its ending is a little too trite, for even my tastes. My only complaint. But it managed to flesh out vampires in the modern day in such a credible fashion that they became real again. We're used to seeing rich, aristocratic type vampires that don't live paycheck to paycheck. While in Near Dark, we have this gritty struggle of vampires surviving in our modern age. Count me in. That's not saying we don't get sexy vampires, because Jenny and Adrian both fill that need quite well, thank you.
Luke, get out now! Luke!
Back in 1999, I couldn't wait to go see The Haunting, an all-star cast, one of Spielberg's first movies produced under DreamWorks, the startup studio he had helped launch. Initially, Spielberg had reached out to Stephen King to collaborate on the story. They ended up having creative differences, which forced them to part ways. And we possibly lost, to that Hollywood bin of unmade ideas, one of the most fascinating movies that could have ever existed. On the plus side, King worked his ideas into the fantastic Rose Red miniseries. Spielberg ended up going with another writer and, well, as they say, we always have the original. 1963's The Haunting holds up to today's modern scrutiny. It's full of chills and bumps in the night, it has character development, and it's been the benchmark for haunted house stories ever since its release. My grandmother made me sit down and watch this when I was a kid. A black and white movie wasn't my idea of a good time, yet. The Haunting would show me otherwise. I've probably seen it 100 times since. Such a classic. The Haunting also made me sleep with all my limbs firmly planted in the bed. No hands or legs hanging out after seeing this.
Ah! You're not real.
When I was a kid, we lived a few blocks away from the dollar movies. To the younger folk that might not have heard of such a thing, back before movies made it to digital within just a few weeks of their release, we had movies at the tail end of their theatrical run, getting sent down to some, pretty low quality places. We're talking broken seats and a layer of popcorn and soda on the floor. In those dark, sticky theaters, movies were squeezed of every dollar possible. Literally, by the way, the dollar movies. My friends and I would buy tickets for whatever kids' movie was playing, and then sneak into the fun stuff. It took 3 attempts for me to finish American Werewolf in London. I'd make it to the scene where he's running through the woods. Then 10-year-old me would go running out of the theater, just to try again another day. Finally, an uncle agreed to see it with me, and I managed to sit through the whole thing. I know I don't have to say anything about this movie, but just about every scene is iconic. David Naughton and Jenny Agutter have so much chemistry that the ending, though sudden, remains heartbreaking. My only problem with the film is that my husband will recite the movie line for line as we're watching it.
totally wiped out.
I don't think you have enough to do tomorrow.
Totally.
Is it the first slasher? Or does that title apply to Psycho or Black Christmas? And then, there is an argument that it doesn't even matter. Not when something hits the zeitgeist as hard as Halloween did. I don't know how I managed to see this so many times when I was a kid. I was 7 when it was released. To be fair, we pretty much watched whatever HBO was showing that night. Many a Halloween, though, I remember watching it with my family, huddled around a 25-inch television screen. The fact that The Shape seemingly is doing all this indiscriminately is just terrifying when you think about it. So do I consider it the first slasher? I'm more of a Black Christmas type myself, but I can't argue with the impact of Halloween. The mask, the outfit, the vibe. Halloween totally set the tone for the next decade.
You didn't believe me. You're all doomed. You're all doomed.
Jason doesn't even have his mask yet, and it's the best movie in the series. If I want to be truthful, I kind of find the sack over the head with that sinister eye hole much more terrifying than the iconic mask Jason ends up donning in the later films. Oddly, Friday the 13th Part 2 was supposed to be an anthology film, but they opted to keep it a sequel. Soon after, Halloween would find out that the anthology route wasn't a popular idea. I've discussed the merits of that film before. Friday the 13th Part 2 would pit a child psychologist against Jason Voorhees. What a brilliant premise. Amy Steele lifts this movie far beyond its ceiling. Ginny, in my humble opinion, is the final girl of all final girls. From the moment she ends a chess game and goes on with a conversation, leaving her chess partner trying to figure out if he actually lost or not.
Well, I think I've got you. Check.
Wrong, white man. Check. Mate. Well, what next? I could get my arm broken by Mark. My brains ponged by electronic or wizard. Or bed. Good night, Paul. See you in the morning.
To getting in Jason's head and figuring out his mommy issues.
Jason! It's all done, Jason. You've done
Amy
your
Steele
job
just
well.
can't be
Mommy is
admired
pleased.
enough for her performance. Just a great movie, and probably the one that cemented Friday the 13th as a legit franchise and not just a fluke. Honorable mentions. The Shining. Another movie I was way too young to see. That bathroom scene probably scarred me for life. And if you haven't seen it, and you're like, a bathroom scene? I suggest you check it out. Black Christmas. I saw this later in life. Odd, since from the sounds of it, nobody cared what I saw, no matter how young I was. Today, though, it's become a staple in our house. Ginger Snaps. I ordered the DVD when it came out, as it didn't play anywhere around me. The transition from teenage girl to werewolf is fun and disturbing. Everything I look for in a movie. Nightbreed. If ever a horror cinematic universe should exist, it should focus on this movie and these characters. I want more, even now, decades later. Suspiria. The cinematography, the atmosphere, and some of the kill scenes are chef's kiss good. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I appreciate a like or subscribe if you're still here. It really helps me know that these are worth doing. I'm only 8 episodes in, and I'm having fun. I get to watch these movies from a different vantage. It's been enlightening. Thanks for following me on my journey. Next time, Black Christmas.